Hey everyone, it's Types, and today I'm going to be looking at a few different deck lists played by people in tournaments. I'm not really a competitive player, but I just, it's interesting looking around and seeing what people are playing. This is not a meta overview, because quite frankly, the meta is pretty boring right now. It doesn't change much. People aren't being too original. That's why I wanted to showcase some of these decks that are a bit more original and kind of fun. The one on the screen right now, is definitely, I'd say, the worst of all the lists I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you like 6 or so lists. There are a variety of different decks. I'll talk about each of them, but I just wanted to showcase them because they're fun. And it's just interesting to see what the different things are in the format right now, other than the obvious, like you got Lugia, you got Mew, you got Lost Zone, stuff like that. But then once you get beyond that, it gets much more interesting. And also, just taking some of these decks are already existing decks that have been repurposed a little bit, or just like brought back, and people have been like kind of thinking they're not as good right now. But this first list here is not very good, I don't think. But it's interesting. It did surprisingly well. I don't remember how well it did, but it did well enough for me to consider putting it in this video. It's Malamar VMAX, which if you don't know what it does, and I realized I can't like click on the card to show off, but pretty much it like messes with your opponent's hand, disrupts them. It's a pretty alright attacker. You can power it up with Dark Patch, which is what this list is trying to do. And then you get 2 in play turn 1 with Radiant Eternus. So in theory, this is pretty solid. Realistically, looking at the list, your goal is to attack turn 2, but you're not actually putting on that much pressure. Sure, you can Path, Marnie, remove a random card from their hand, or a chosen card from their hand, I believe, but it's still not like that good. So yeah, no, it's an alright list, I think. No, it's fun though. It doesn't really play many basics. It doesn't play any basics of the VMAX, which is kind of questionable, but still fun. And uses Radiant Eternus. Obviously, your Path. If your opponent plays Path before you can Radiant Eternus, that's really bad. If you start Radiant Eternus, that's not great. You do play 4 nets to get it back up though, and then you can play it again. This year's obviously starting just Radiant Eternus was really bad. And Crobat starts obviously bad as well. The list looks obviously very clunky, but it's kind of fun, and I wanted to showcase it. But then the other one, we're moving on here. We actually have 2 Flying Pikachu Arceus decks here, and I think these are surprisingly they're interesting. Certainly one of the more interesting decks in the meta, if not like the most. This is the most mainstream deck I'm going to showcase, except for I do have a control list, which is probably less mainstream. But Arceus VStar Flying Pikachu, pretty. It's not like a super common deck, but certainly one you'll see. And it is seeing play. But there are a few builds here. These aren't anything crazy, but this one I really like because it has a bunch of different attackers, and you have the Espeon to protect you from like effects, and then to do big damage in certain cases. And you also have obviously Flying Pikachu to wall, Aerodactyl V-Star as mostly counter to Lugia, but not a bad attacker, especially if you're say in the mirror match or something. And so you have all these Pokemon that have solid effects. Also, Empoleon V is a bit interesting here. I'm guessing it's just in there for the for Lost Zone. It stops some other stuff as well. It's not a bad attacker by any means either. I know Melanie in this list, but then we see Drapion as well, the attack from Mew. Pretty common, so nice variety of attackers with, of course, Arceus V-Star to support it. And then this list plays Judge, which is interesting. Surprised to see that over Marnie. Not exactly sure what value it gets. But then to protect your bench, it has 3 cards. There's Volo, which discards a V, which is nice if your opponent's... I guess that's more than 3 cards to protect. But to remove your Pokemon, I guess, Volo to discard a V. So if they've hit into one of your Vs, you can retreat it or whatever, then Volo, get it off the bench. You can also collapse Stadium, pretty much the same thing. Also restricts the options in some interesting ways. And then Leafy Camera Poncho to stop your, I think it's VMAX or V-Star from getting gusted or something. It's pretty, it's pretty good, but it's kind of niche obviously as well. But so it's an interesting card here. And then we also see that the deck plays Radiant Gardevoir and Hyper Potion to heal and reduce damage, which is pretty good as well. So that's interesting, seeing a more like tanky defensive style deck, and I really like that. And then this other list here, we see this one plays a bit heavier of a line 2/2 Flying Pikachu, and then a 2/2 Alolan Vulpix VStar. A big part of why I wanted to show this off. Oh, and we also see the Drapion here. This list also does not play Melanie, surprisingly, but it plays Raihan, unlike the other list, which does not play Raihan. So we see a bunch of differences. But You see that it has like V-Guard energy as well. This other list does not play V-Guard energy. So this one also has that tanking option, but then not Hyper Potion. This list plays a Sharon's Care. The other list does not, plays Volo instead. So you see lists going for like different value, like ideas. And I think this is much more interesting than the differences between Lugia decks, because Lugia decks generally they play like very similar things. But Arceus, especially Arceus Flying Pikachu, you see a lot of diversity within the deck build. And then this list also plays Piers, which is surprising. I don't think Piers is that good, but it has some value in this deck certainly. And then we also see this list plays Path, right? Path's very good. I am probably going on too much about this list, but it's interesting. Instead of Espeon, it plays Big Parasol here, which is obviously a similar idea. Not the same certainly, but similar idea. And then we also see, I guess that's about it for this list. And they both play Pump on Path, which is pretty common. But the Alolan Vulpix VStar is a nice tech option. Obviously, all the Pokemon in here are tech options, like Aerodactyl tech against Lugia, Flying Pikachu to wall basics, and hit like weakness, which is it's just a very good Pokemon right now. Espeon is, I guess it counters Lugia as well some, but or it counters Lugia a bunch. And it counters some other stuff as well. And then this list plays the Alolan Vulpix VStar, which is countering a lot of decks. I messed around with it a bunch when it came out at first. And it's pretty solid overall, being able to wall Pokemon with abilities, hit their effects. And it also has a pretty interesting V-Star power. So you see that the deck has actually different options on V-Star power. This list also does, but really you're always going to use Arceus unless you really need Aerodactyl. And Aerodactyl is in a sense of instead of Path. They're not exactly the same though. But you see, I just think the way the deck builds are, they're pretty interesting. No Melanie in them, which is surprising. I feel like that's very strong, but it is what it is. And then we see another Arceus list here. This is a pretty generic list, but I think it deserves mentioning because this deck has not seen play in a while. And it is Arceus Beedrill, Arceus V-Star with the Single Strike Beedrill to be able to instantly KO Pokemon that have special energy attached. Very, very good right now. Surprisingly, I don't know if this is surprising, but the list does not run any fighting techs. A lot of times they ran fighting techs, especially for the mirror. It was like a mirror-focused deck, but it doesn't run any fighting techs. Instead, goes with fire for the 1 fire energy for Radiant Charge. It also plays Drapion V, and then a very solid 3/3 Arceus supported by that Dunsparce. So we see Dunsparce coming into this list again, which is kind of cool. And I don't know if it's actually that necessary, but it's there. In fact, I'm not exactly sure what it is for. Maybe Zapdos, but I don't think it matters too much. But all in all, it's a pretty straightforward list. Also Gutsy, Pickaxe, and Trekking Shoes. I think was Trekking Shoes in all these lists. No, it wasn't in most. Okay, never mind. So this list plays Trekking Shoes and Gutsy, Pickaxe to be able to draw through the deck faster, though. So that's pretty cool. I definitely think fighting could be played in this list, especially with the Gutsy, Pickaxe, allowing for some very strong combos, because it used to be fighting the Flygon V and then possibly Sandaconda V Max making their way into this list, but certainly mixing up with Radiant Charizard. Radiant Charizard is just really good, right? And Drapion V is also very good, but pretty straightforward stuff as well. Also, the Pokegear, it's very consistent. I don't know if the power output's quite there, but it's a pretty fun deck. Now getting into another deck. This one's also somewhat generic, but it did surprisingly well. It's got Zacian V-Star, Zacian V, which hits hard, Zacian V-Star, which hits even harder, possibly if you use the V-Star power, and then Zamazenta V-Star, which, in Zamazenta V, I believe this is the one that hits back for each prize they've taken, can get very big in the late game, and then Zamazenta V-Star here can reduce damage or can hit as a pretty solid attacker. So you just see these like solid attacker style deck. And I think it's really interesting. Pretty straightforward, but just hits hard, hits like consistently. Obviously, the Metal Saucer. This is kind of like that Malamar deck, where it has 4 Metal Saucer instead of 4 Dark Patch. Obviously, a bit different. This one's not as disruption heavy. This one's more consistent as well, running actual like normal counts of cards, but pretty fun. Also, one thing I want to know is Serena's super good right now. This is going to be not the last time you can play it, but Serena will be not as good in the upcoming set. So I want to get that out of the way when you can. It's a fun card to play as well. And then you see like pretty standard stuff in this list. This is not that spectacular. Low counts of supporters feels a bit sketchy. As I said, these lists all did well enough in tournaments, but they didn't necessarily do amazingly. So, yeah. But this list is pretty fun. But the one I want to talk about the most here, actually, is Mewtwo V Union Control deck. I believe this was described as Mewtwo Gengar. I'd say it's more of like a Mewtwo combo deck, which is probably how you should describe it. Mewtwo with the Peonia Dream Ball combo. So I'm not overly familiar with this deck, not gonna lie, but I believe you use like Dream Ball with Peonia, and then I think you need to get a KO. I'm not actually sure if you need a KO, but I believe you do. I have not played this list. I'm just gonna tell you that. But your goal is to like take Dream Ball from the prizes, and then you get out of stage 2 that you can't normally get out. So you have a few options. Notably, you have Chandelure here. Well, there are 3 options really. Chandelure, which is obviously very good for it removes your weakness, which is good if your opponent's playing Dark. So notably, Drapion V sees a lot of play, and Chandelure is very important in stopping your opponent from one-shotting you, which just means you lose. Also, Dusknoir here, turn off Special Energy, very good. This list doesn't even run like Special Energy other than Capture, which doesn't matter too much. So Dusknoir can be very, very good, of course, against Lugia and some other decks. And then Gengar, the favorite one here. Admittedly, not that good in this list. I'm just going to say that. It goes for a little bit of a different build here, actually. You move damage counters off your Psychic Pokemon, or around your Psychic Pokemon. So your goal here is to move it onto Gengar or your Gardevoir or Curlios, and then Cheryl it off the damage. And then you don't need to Super Regeneration. So this is pretty cool here. This means you can actually deal damage and like take KOs with Mewtwo. So that's very strong. It seems a bit sketchy to get off the ground in the first place, but as soon as you've done that, you're in a great spot where you can heal lots, and it's just a very cool deck. And I think it's really fun. But yeah, I think it's built pretty well as well. The Battle VIP passes are a bit sketchy. I don't know if I love that. Also, I think a Glade could be good in this list, of course. But overall, this looks really cool, and I'm interested. Interested in seeing how a Gardevoir is going to do with the upcoming set. If you didn't know, there's a Gardevoir EX coming out, which is absolutely bonkers. But yeah, this is pretty cool. I just wanted to showcase some interesting lists. So this is my favorite. I think I'm going to showcase this on my channel at some point, like play the deck. It looks pretty fun, but yeah, I don't know exactly how it works, as I said, but it's interesting. I've played, obviously, Mewtwo Control quite a bit with Gardevoir and stuff. I played Ralts Control as well. They should probably play the other Ralts, as that does have some actual very strong control options, but anyway, it's not the point right now. But then this list just looks cool, of course. No boss as well, kind of sketchy. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're enjoying Pokemon and these snacks. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.